Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. Please pardon my appearance. I literally just came from the gym. So literally 20 minutes ago, I was working out. So as a result, please pardon my appearance. I look very flushed. I look very pale. I know, but we do have to get some of these videos finalized. So we are going to do our best to go through this particular important video today, where we are going to talk about stability, growth, and value in the collectibles market in the year 2021. Now, this is a very important conversation to have because, in my opinion, there's a lot of people that are making mistakes in a lot of these markets from a speculator or an investor standpoint. And what I mean by that is, in my opinion, they're taking on too much risk. And this is happening with a lot of the younger people, especially people in their 20s that may not trust the financial markets. Maybe they don't have a lot of money to invest. And maybe instead of taking my advice of becoming financially established by putting their money in index funds, mutual funds, stocks, bonds, ETFs, real estate, other traditional asset classes, they really want to play these markets. And there's nothing wrong with that. I said this before. You make $50, $60, $70, $80, $90, $100,000 a year, and you already are maxing out your 401k, your IRA, or maybe you're already investing in an S&P 500 index fund or some other type of stock-based mutual fund, and you just want to take a little bit of money and you want to play with cryptocurrency or precious metals or even collectibles. I have no problem with that. Overall, it's not going to hurt you. In fact, in certain instances, it may actually help you understand better how these markets work over the short term, over the long term. And as a result, maybe you will learn something and you'll be able to take that knowledge, run with it, and become an even better, successful speculator, collector, or investor operating in these markets overall. And that's always a good thing. Well, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk a little bit about stable growth and value collectibles in these markets and why I think a lot of younger people are taking on too much risk. And in some cases, there's a lot of older people out there that are steadfast in a lot of the items that they collect where they're not really applying a lot of the knowledge they have to some of these other markets that they could potentially profit from, or, I hate to say this, cut their losses and just get rid of some of these items that they're holding on to in their 60s or 70s that are not going to do anything but go down in value. Let's be realistic here. Not everything that is collectible is worth holding on to for the long term. And this is something that you guys got to understand. And in further videos that I've done on this concept, I often compare it to a relationship that some of you guys may be in, whether it's with a significant other, it could even be with a friend. Maybe the relationship is toxic and at some point you have to let it go. It's very difficult, but some of these collecting categories operate almost the same, where there's a lot of people that get addicted to collecting these items, or they have a strong emotional attachment to these items, and they don't realize that a lot of the items that they're buying on a regular basis or chasing after or collecting are actually bad for their life, for their financial livelihood going forward. Now, I know a lot of you guys staring at this board behind me, you're going to tell me, Sean, I can't read anything on that board. It doesn't matter. It's there for my benefit. I'm going to read a lot of this stuff to you. You guys are going to understand this concept fully going forward. I promise you. Now, in my opinion, right now, in the year 2021, there's a lot of collecting categories in the overall antiques and collectibles trade that pretty much we already know, if you watched any of my other earlier videos, that there's three main markets that make up the overall antiques and collectibles trade. Those markets are speculative, established, and mature. Well, as a result, a lot of the collecting categories that fall under those titles, you can apply them to either growth, value, or stability. So if you want an easier way to understand these markets, if I mention Pokemon cards, obviously that is a speculative market, but it's also a growth market, believe it or not. If you look at some of the gains that have been made just in the vintage and or modern era Pokemon market at present time, those gains are substantial. That's on par with Amazon stock. That's comparable to Netflix, to any of the other FANG stocks out there, if you ever heard that term being used, where there's a lot of money that is being made and concentrated in a lot of these collecting categories. Magic the Gathering is no different. Vintage video games are no different. Graded video games are no different. A lot of these markets are in a growth phase at present time due to a lot of money coming into them. And I do know within the past few months, there has been a pullback in some of these markets, but I predict that eventually growth will be the name of the game going forward when a lot of new money comes into these markets. So rest assured, we're still looking at growth in a lot of these collecting categories, whether we like it or not. So whether we're looking at Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, comic books, certain vintage toys, video games, these markets do have a lot of growth to offer. The problem that I have is there's a lot of collectors, speculators, and investors that are going all in, and they're betting the farm. They're going into debt to invest in these collecting categories. This is inherently dangerous for many reasons. Now, we're not going to touch on any of these reasons in this particular video. That'll be an upcoming video, but I just want to let you guys be aware that if you are getting involved in a lot of these markets, and I'm going to name them right here, Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh!, most comic books, modern era sports cards, all video games, graded or ungraded, collectible sneakers, most vintage toys, most vinyl records, with few exceptions, other collectible card games, Flesh and Blood, etc., even certain Lego sets. You need to understand that if that's all that you are investing in the overall antiques and collectibles trade, you are operating in highly speculative markets, as we've discussed before on this channel, that are also geared towards growth. Now, you got to be careful because you really need to have some exposure to stability, mature markets. Now, here's the problem that we have when we talk about mature markets. Most of these markets have an insane barrier to entry to either invest in these markets or learn about them. For instance, if you come to me and you say, Sean, you're a consultant in the trade. I want to learn coins and currency. You're going to have an uphill battle if you have no experience in those markets. There's a ton of books on this particular bookshelf over here that I'm pointing at that are all geared to learning how to collect, how to invest in rare coins and currency. In fact, believe it or not, out of all the books that I have on the antiques and collectibles trade in my collection, most of the books I have are geared towards a lot of these sophisticated markets. Whether it's antique furniture, whether it's coins, currency, antique glass, whatever it is, even firearms, all those markets, artwork, they're so advanced that you have to literally own multiple books to learn how to be a better collector, a better speculator, a better investor in those markets. Also, if you're going to invest in things like coins, currency, rare books, rare maps, historical documents, antique weapons, edged weapons, antique and vintage sports cards, high-end art by established artists, all this stuff is going to take a substantial amount of money to enter these markets. For instance, if you want to get involved with Pokemon, you want to get involved with Magic the Gathering, you can log on Amazon and you can buy a factory sealed Magic the Gathering or Pokemon booster box for what? Less than $90 at present time, and you can call yourself an investor or a speculator in this market. That's all it takes. And there's a million other people out there that are pretty much operating in this same market. So as a result, if you log on to any collecting forum, you're guaranteed to meet one of them. They're guaranteed to at least be able to talk to you about these collecting markets. So as a result, they have a lower barrier to entry. Now, I know a lot of you guys in the past have been hypocritical of me being critical of a lot of these speculators, of a lot of these Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters that are coming into these markets thinking the sky's the limit. Well, one of the things that you may not be aware of, I also write for Antiques and Auction News, and I'm also an active consultant in the overall antiques and collectibles trade. I also criticize a lot of the guys right now that are watching this channel who are in their late 50s, their 60s, their 70s, who are invested in what I call value collectibles. Now, here's the problem with a lot of these value collectibles. Believe it or not, the reason why they're called value collectibles is because they're dying on the open market. We have items like Lionel and other toy trains, Hot Wheels cars, Barbie dolls, Mego toys and action figures, Marx play sets, Western collectibles, even your grandfather or father's collection of Playboys, Hummels, Cabbage Patch dolls, antique and vintage marbles, even certain cast iron collectibles, Pez dispensers, even pre-Nintendo video games like Atari, ColecoVision, and Intellivision. All these markets, guys, are dying. They're pretty much sitting in your collection, and year after year, they become overall, not always, but overall, worth less and less. And believe it or not, I have my critics when I write articles for Antiques and Auction News, and I tell a lot of the people out there that, cast iron collectibles are not going to be extremely popular 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. Just study the demographics if you don't believe me. Poll of my audience. How many people in the 20s, 30s, and 40s that are watching this video collect cast iron collectibles or cast iron antiques? I bet if I asked you guys honestly to let me know in the comment section below how you define a cast iron antique or collectible and give me an example of one, some of you couldn't even do it because you have absolutely no interest in this collecting category. Well, there are people, believe it or not, that criticize my articles in Antiques and Auction News that think a lot of these markets are going to make a comeback. I'm telling you right now, future generations are not going to care about Lionel toy trains or other toy brands for that matter. They're not going to care about Barbie, Hot Wheels, Mego toys, Marx play sets, Playboys, Hummels, marbles, and most pre-Nintendo video games. So if you have these items, you are better off selling into the market at present time because over the next 10, 20 years, a lot of these collectors are going to start to die out. Meaning, I hate to say this, hate to sound morbid, they're going to be either 6 feet under or they're going to be in an urn on your fireplace mantle. I know that sounds a little bit disgusting, but as a result, you're going to have no one to sell these items to, guys. So you're better off selling these items now, taking the loss, putting that money in other traditional assets, or going after other collectibles that are either in the stable area or at least in the growth range. Now, I know a lot of you are probably amazed at this advice because I have told a lot of you since the advent of this channel to be careful if you are investing in speculative markets in the trade. And I still want to pass on that advice. I've said this before. Younger generations, in my opinion, are taking on too much risk. But if you are involved in any of these markets that are dying off, you are better off selling your holdings, even if you take a loss, and putting that money somewhere else. And at this point, I'm going to tell you, the trend is your friend around the bend until it ends. We've all heard that a million times. You probably did not just first hear that here on Reserved Investments. You probably heard it through Rudy with Alpha Investments. Even Graham Stephan, who runs a finance channel, has already said that. I've heard him say that. So as a result, where I'm going with this is the trend, I really hate to say it, is Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, comic books, video games. Or if you want to come over to the stability side, the mature side of the trade, and you want to learn these markets, coins, currency, rare books, historical documents, antique weapons, whatever your thing is, you need to start selling. Some of you guys, and this is the whole crux of this video, now that I am almost 15 minutes in, I want to tell you why I'm doing this. I come across so many people on collecting forums that tell me, Sean, I'm diamond hands all in. I will never sell my collection of Pokemon cards. I will never sell my collection of rare maps. I will never sell my collection of Mego toys or Hot Wheels cars or Lionel trains. And I'm going to tell you this point blank. This is very bad advice. You guys are doing yourselves and your family a disservice by having this mindset that there's always going to be a market for these collectibles. And again, I don't care if we're talking antique weapons. I don't care if we're talking sneakers, video games, or Western collectibles. All these markets, the only constant in the entire antiques and collectibles trade is change. And I state this repeatedly in a lot of the videos that I do, even in the articles that I write for Antiques and Auction News. There is no such thing, with few exceptions, as to have exposure to a collecting category where you can collect in that particular collecting category over the long term and not expect it to move at all, whether it moves exponentially forward or exponentially backwards, meaning you lose money. The only constant in these markets is change. You always have to have your finger on the pulse. Now, to be fair, if you are investing in coins, currency, rare books, items on the mature side of the spectrum, those markets have more stability. So as a result, you can go to the market, you can buy a rare coin, you can put it in a safety deposit box for 10 to 20 years, forget about it, come back to it, and most often you will not lose a significant amount of money on that purchase, assuming you bought right, and assuming you bought a high-grade specimen or example that does have a lot of demand and rarity on the overall market. I'm sorry. I know a lot of you want to argue with me on this. You cannot say the same thing about Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, rare video games, modern era sports cards, and the like. These markets are not established. They are speculative. Speculative collectibles have one advantage to them. They are in the growth phase, meaning if you buy right, you can make a lot of money in these particular items over the short term and sometimes over the long term. When it comes to items over here on the mature side of the trade, the problem that you have, if a rare coin or a rare piece of currency or a rare book or a rare map comes up for auction, most people, myself included, know the historical significance of that item, the rarity of the item, and the value of that item. As a result, they're prepared to bid it up exponentially. There are less deals to be found overall on this side of the trade. Now let's talk about these wonderful dying value collectibles over here. When these come up for bid, this is a mistake that a lot of people make. Now that we're 20 minutes into this video almost, I can talk about this. You guys attend an auction and you get a price guide and a rare Lionel train comes up for bid and you go, well, my gosh, this price guide lists this rare train at $10,000. It's only going at auction for $5,000. If I buy it and I win the bid, and let's say I only pay $6,000 for that train, I can flip it for $10,000 profit. So I can make $4,000 on that. The problem is, what you don't realize, the reason why that rare Lionel train is only selling for $5,000 to $6,000 when the price guide lists it at $10,000 is because a lot of the collectors that are collecting in this market are dying off. As a result, prices are starting to drop. You do not want to be left with your pants down collecting a lot of these dying collectibles that are never, ever going to return to greatness. And what you guys got to understand, what is listed over here, eventually, some, not all of these collectibles, but some of them will end up over here. As a matter of fact, this is where you're going to hate me, and this is how I'm going to end part one of this video. The collectibles here, they have a better chance of ending up here than they do over here, guys. Collectibles are linear. Antiques are cyclical. All of these items over here, in most cases, are cyclical. The markets for rare coins, currency, books, historical documents, antique weapons, even antique furniture, those markets are cyclical. Collectible markets are linear. They die out over time. Just like I tell you guys in many videos, Hummels are never coming back. Collectible marbles, in most cases, are never coming back to where they were just 10 years ago. These markets are going to die out. These markets here still have room to run, but eventually, a lot of them, over time, will also succumb to becoming value collectibles, and then they will die out. That is the end of the lesson today. Let me know if you like this video. Let me know if you hated this video. Let me know if you got anything out of this video in the comment section below. I predict a lot of thumbs down and a lot of negative comments due to this particular video, which is going to be eye-opening for some of the Timmys, Kimmys, and Poindexters out there that really consider themselves sophisticated investors when in all actuality, they are unsophisticated speculators operating in the antiques and collectibles trade, akin to being blind squirrels trying to find a nut. Thanks for watching and have a great day.